From the far reaches of the Milky Way galaxy, it's Retro Nerd Girl with a film review for you. Today, I'll be reviewing the movie Willow, released in 1988. Starring Val Kilmer, Joanne Woodward, and Warwick Davis. The synopsis is, a young farmer, Willow Offgood, is chosen to protect a small defenseless baby, Elora, from an evil queen. The story. American film director, producer, screenwriter, and entrepreneur George Lucas wrote the story called Munchkins in 1972, influenced by The Wizard of Oz. However, it got a second life after Lucas met English actor, comedian, filmmaker, and television presenter Warwick Davis on the set of Star Wars Episode VI, Return of the Jedi, released in 1983, when Warwick was only 11 years old. George was so impressed with the actor that he got the inspiration to expand the idea. Even though George Lucas was wildly successful at the time with both Star Wars and the Indiana Jones franchises, he faced significant challenges to get the film made because fantasy genre films categorically did terribly at the box office. So many major studios turned down the film until MGM got involved. It was during the post-production phase of Cocoon, released in 1985, when George Lucas approached its director, Ron Howard, to take on the project. Ron was the star of Lucas's breakout film, American Graffiti, in 1973. Ron Howard turned down Cocoon, The Return, and brought in Bob Dolman, who turned in a screenplay in 1986. The story we witness feels like a single narrative, but the lore is actually pretty substantial before and after the story that is presented in the film. So this could technically be considered the middle of the tale. What we got was a magical, action-packed flick with intense sentimental value and an adorable charm. The pacing. At 2 hours and 6 minutes, it's long, but I never actually felt the length of the film because every part to me feels like it belongs. It's so good, and I'm always happy to make time for this one. Now the challenge. The big challenge in this film is Queen Bavmorda. The film shows us the last portion of her life, but there's a significant backstory that leads up to the events that we see in the film. She was born into magical powers in the Valley of Tirasleen, in a place called the Mother World, getting training from the fairy queen Shalindria and enduring a rivalry with the young enchantress Rozelle. Craving more power, Bavmorda stole a powerful book of dark magic and left Tirasleen. She returned during the engagement of Rozelle to the young prince MacLeod. Bavmorda cast a spell on MacLeod that made him break off his engagement to Rozelle, and he married her instead. After the birth of their daughter Sorsha, Bavmorda killed the king and queen, making MacLeod the new king. However, Bavmorda was not interested in sharing the throne with her husband, so she gathered supporters and moved to her new fortress at Nockmaar. She then cast a spell to trap the king and his loyal subjects within Tirasleen, summoned trolls to guard the city, and surrounded it within a stone maze. This led to the very first showdown between Bavmorda and Rozelle. The battle was fierce, but Bavmorda was not powerful enough to kill Rozelle, so she transformed her into a muskrat and confined her on an island in the center of a great lake. Bavmorda was told of a child that would become the future empress of Tirasleen and would vanquish her. As a result, she imprisoned all of the pregnant women in the land in her dungeon, and this is where the film begins to tell the tale. So now that we're all caught up, we get a good picture of just how evil Bavmorda is and why she's after that baby. Simply killing the baby would only cause her to be reincarnated. So Bavmorda's plan was to perform the ritual of oblivion to banish Elora spirit to the netherworld. When the child was born, a midwife took pity on her and escaped with the child. Finally, a win for the other team. I mean, Mortar has just been getting her way this whole time. So this was a very big loss for her, and she didn't handle it well. When Sorsha's efforts to find the child failed to please Mortar, she sent her fiercest warrior, General Kale, to assist. I always imagined a little bit of a romance between Mortar and General Kale based on their interactions together. There was something very personal about it, but it just may be Mortar casting a spell to make him keep his loyalty. General Kale was actually named after the film critic Pauline Kael, who gave unfavorable reviews to popular films, especially all of George Lucas's films. So some people thought that it was pretty mean-spirited to do something like that, but Kael admitted to being flattered by it. In the story, Kale is much like Darth Vader, the scarred face beyond recognition, covered by a very scary mask to conceal his humanity. He is also a very powerful henchman that intimidates and dominates his opponents. Mortar acts much like the Emperor, cruel, selfish, and has the same cackling flair in her demeanor. Together, this dynamic duo of doom lights up the screen with so much energy and fun for me. I enjoyed the challenge in the story immensely. Now, my empathy. What I love about this movie is the journey that the audience is taken on with so many amazing protagonist characters. I hope you'll indulge me as I go through the story play by play to highlight specific thoughts I have about the characters. At first, we see a poor midwife sacrifice herself unceremoniously so that the child Elora may live, putting her afloat on a river as a last act of heroics. The tension in that scene alone was riveting. We are clearly not meant to sympathize with or even have an emotional reaction to the nursemaid being attacked by Mortar's death dogs, but we're meant to realize the deadly stakes involved in this story. So there's an immediate tension in the story when we see that Mims and Rannon, Willow Offgood's adorable little children, found Elora and brought her to their family. You hope and you pray that Mortar's beasts don't find out where Elora is to hurt this precious family. Willow's backstory is that he showed magical talents as an infant, and the wise elder magician of the village, High Aldwin, announced that he was special at birth. However, Willow's father made his son follow in the family business as a farmer. The High Aldwin held a contest to choose his next apprentice and asked which finger held the power to control the world. Willow failed by not trusting his intuition to choose his own finger, which was the correct answer. This reminds me very much of the moment Conan learns the riddle of steel in Conan the Barbarian in 1982. The lesson that Willow is meant to learn is that the power to change the world is always in one's own hand. It's pretty much the handbook to how to become a hero. At first, it seems as if the nursemaid's last-minute plan to save Elora was working brilliantly, but then, when we least expected it, in the middle of a crowded festival, Willow's village was attacked by death dogs searching for the child. Willow is put in the hot seat for having the baby that brought destruction to the village. Not only that, the baby is a Dikini, which is a foreign tribe of people. Willow is from a tribe called the Nelwyns. There are other tribes like fairies, trolls, and brownies that live in the mother world. This is where the High Aldwin announces that Willow, with a band of volunteers, will be sent on a journey to give back the child to the Dikinis. These tribes usually don't mix, so it's important for Willow to leave the baby with a stranger when he finds them. After reaching the crossroads between lands, they meet a man in a cage and an army marching towards a battle. These are not the proper circumstances to drop off a baby, that's for sure. At first, you think that Willow's team may be the band of characters that will endure the entire journey, but most of them return to the Nelwyn Valley. The only person left to stay by his side is his best friend Migosh. They decide to free the man in the cage and give him the baby, and that was quite a bad decision because the baby is stolen almost immediately by two adorably obnoxious brownies. Shalendria appears as a forest spirit and puts the brownies together with Willow to protect Elora. I mention all of this to highlight the fact that this is the moment in the film that Willow makes the courageous decision to accept his call to be a hero and the responsibility to take on this challenge. Sending Migosh home is his sacrifice of comfort for having a shoulder to lean on during the journey. Now he can be comforted that his friend Migosh is safe at home and Willow is doing his part to save their world. I really loved how delicately that scene was written and how important it was for Willow to make that mature decision. The man in the cage is actually Mad Mardigan, a self-proclaimed greatest swordsman that ever lived. And we're all kind of skeptical about that, but later on in the story, he proves that he most likely is, or at least we can all agree, that he's pretty spectacular with a sword. When we meet him in the story, he is set up to be a bit of an irresponsible, pompous scoundrel with a witty tongue. Mad Mardigan was a knight of the kingdom of Galadorn, along with his best friend Eric. He had a love affair that ruined his family name and deserted Eric and his brethren. He too goes through his own rejection and acceptance to the call to adventure, joining Willow in his mission to save the life of the child. Next, Willow rescues the sorceress Rozelle to join the fight. There's a wonderful dynamic between Rozelle and Willow as she becomes his teacher in the arts of magic. There is quite a bit of endearing hijinks surrounding Willow's failed attempts to transform her back into her true form, as well as a gradual improvement of his abilities, to the point that you actually believe that he may become a great wizard one day. Throughout the story, Sorsha is hot on their trail, with General Kale nearby. They even manage to capture the heroes, and at one point, Sorsha kicks Mad Mardigan in the face, which is the birthplace of many moments of enjoyable, snarky banter between the two. Through a mishap of a love spell, Mad Mardigan professes his undying love for Sorsha, which is something that she has never heard in her life. This leads Sorsha and Mad Mardigan to eventually fall in love, and she joins the team. Now, many viewers criticize the story at this point because it may seem a little too sudden for Sorsha to turn against her mother. But what is not revealed in the film is that Bavmorda was always cruel to her daughter because Sorsha had no magical talent. She was also very jealous of anyone who got close to Sorsha and used magic to remove them from her life. Sorsha took a liking to swordplay, archery, horseback riding, and she earned the right on her own merit to command the Nockmaar army, second in command under General Kale. Bavmorda barely tolerated her except for the fact that Sorsha was loyal and worked very hard for her. So there was a huge strain on their relationship from the onset. There was a secondary reason why Sorsha turned sides in the story, explained in a deleted scene. When Sorsha arrived at Tir Asleen, she spoke with her father, who was trapped in suspended animation, and he convinced her to change sides. From my perspective, without knowing those things, Sorsha's transformation made sense to me because you can see from her reaction that declaration of love by Mad Mardigan visibly shakes her. She stares at him in complete wonder, trying to figure out what the heck has just happened. And before the adventure to Tir Asleen, Mad Mardigan uses Sorsha as a hostage to escape a very sticky situation. And in my opinion, I think she allowed him to capture her, waiting to hear more of this declaration of love from him. Now, once he says that he's not in love with her, she no longer needs to stay, and she easily escapes. I love that moment when she says, "I dwell in darkness without you, and it went away." However, you can see that the two of them have been permanently affected by these events, and there was definitely some underlying excitement between the two of them brewing for one another. And just when you think that there are enough protagonists to get the job done, Eric also joins with his Knights of Galadorn to finally face off with Queen Bavmorda at Nockmaar. At the final battle of Bavmorda's citadel, we get full character arcs for most of the characters. Madmartigan proves himself to be worthy of knighthood again, redeemed for his past. Sorsha confronts her mother and learns ultimately that she is truly lost to her. After suffering in exile for decades, Rozelle gets a chance to finally have an epic battle with Bavmorda. And during this entire story, Willow has been failing and improving along the way to the point he transformed Rozelle back into her human form. By the time he faced off with Bavmorda, even I believed that he had a decent chance to face her. But even still, it's very evident that she's much too strong to defeat. Willow ultimately learns that he can use his wit to win a battle against a more powerful opponent by using a low-level practical illusion to make it seem as if he teleported Elora away from the citadel. It's a wonderful moment of growth for the character that sweetens the joy of this movie's happy ending. Now, the technical aspects. Principal photography began from April to October in 1987 at Dinowick Quarry in Wales, Elstree Studios in Hertfordshire, New Zealand, some scenic photography in South China for blue screen footage, and some exteriors shot around George Lucas's Skywalker Ranch on location at Brownies Falls near Mount Shasta. These scenic aspects were pivotal to providing the audience with a sense that the Mother World was a lush wonder of nature. I was blown away by the gorgeous traveling scenery expressing the long trek of adventure Willow and his friends span during the story. It really sold me on this world. The film had many practical visuals and costumes to help sell the story, such as Bavmorda's devil dogs that were Rottweilers outfitted in rubber masks and suits. There were excellent makeup transformations and fantasy creatures throughout the story. The main MacGuffin in the story was baby Elora Danon, who was adorably played by 6-month-old twins Kate and Ruth Greenfield. Whenever filming with babies and toddlers, there are many challenges to production, but this film seemed to work it all out in stride, making Elora feel like more than just a MacGuffin, but a lovable character. Much of that is due to coordination, editing, and visual trickery. The twins were too young to have hair yet, so a miniature wig was applied using syrup as a gentle adhesive. Isn't that brilliant? And no worries, Madmartigan does not feed Elora blackroot. It was actually vanilla that he gave her. Another brilliant idea. There was also a 13-pound animatronics baby used for the action scenes. It was capable of moving its head and opening its mouth. Another more flexible prop baby was used in other more dangerous scenes as well. Kate and Ruth outgrew their prop and the baby carrier that Willow had on his back, so second assistant director Jerry Toomey had his newborn niece Rebecca Behrman body double, though uncredited. The Brownies were filmed against a blue screen on a soundstage and then added within the scenes in post-production. George Lucas's Industrial Light and Magic visual effects company worked on one of the most incredible revolutionary breakthroughs at the time, a digital morphing technology coordinated by Dennis Muren and developed by Doug Smith and David Allen from September 1987 to March 1988. Before this, the best way to do it was editing the target, matching the position as best as possible, then applying optical dissolves into the final desired transformation. Other means were a string of transforming clips, edited together from different angles of the transformation as seen in movies like An American Werewolf in London, released in 1981. The technology was used in the triumphant scene where Willow finally transforms Finn Rozelle from a goat to her human form. Before it finally works, he turns the goat into an ostrich, a peacock, a tortoise, a tiger, and finally her correct form. It was fantastic. Now, one of my favorite parts of the film was when the two-headed dragon emerged. It was a stop-motion character shot on green screen, and at one point there was a puppet of Madmartigan riding the monster. The dragon was named Eber Sisk, as an inside joke to the crew in reference to the movie critics Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert, who had been giving George Lucas bad reviews. I would expect that George Lucas's film would have been composed by John Williams, and for many years I thought this was, and I was very wrong. The composer for this was James Horner, who put together a beautiful score for Heroes with a great deal of influence from classical works. The main theme can be heard in the title sequence as airy, light, and had a wonderful suggestion of hope. In contrast, the theme for Bavmortar's side of the story was filled with dark, mysterious stings, rumblings as if evil was slithering beneath the surface. I loved it. The action scenes were infused with a score suggesting a more exciting and trumpet-laden tune that you could hum along to. What a score! It was so good that it was licensed to be used in many theatrical trailers in the 1980s and 90s. Now for the performances. Warwick Davis was cast to play an Ewok for Star Wars Episode 6, Return of the Jedi, that was released in 1983, as I explained earlier, at the age of 11. Actor Kenny Baker, who played R2-D2, was to play the main Ewok character by the name of Wicket, but unfortunately he got sick. George Lucas gave the role to Davis after watching his performance as an extra and being very impressed by what he saw. In 1987, Davis was offered the role of Willow, the main character that was written with him in mind. He was only 17 years old at the time, playing a character that was indeed a grown man with children. What a fantastic performance and display of Warwick's incredible talent as he was just starting his career. Davis had to learn how to take care of a baby, ride a horse, sword fight. He worked on his speech and how to perform a few magical tricks. Warwick also met his future wife, Samantha Davis, through the film, who appeared as a Nelwyn villager. Val Kilmer played the valiant Madmartigan, ad-libbing a lot of his dialogue, which infused the character with comedy, complexity, and a fun unpredictability. This character was so good and displays Val's range as an actor, because it's really hard to imagine that this is the same actor who played in Top Gun in 1986. Now, I have to say that one of my favorite actors in this was Joanne Woodward, who played Sorsha. Not only did I find her to be very beautiful, she had a mix of demure grace to play nobility, but also a fiery, rebellious stature to play a character bold enough to defy her role in life. She was fantastic. Her on-screen chemistry with Val Kilmer led to a romance in real life between the two, and eventually a 7-year marriage that produced 2 beautiful children, Mercedes and Jack Kilmer. Jean Marsh deliciously played Queen Bavmortar with rambunctious glee. She had a similar role to Queen Bavmortar in Return to Oz in 1985, and then continued the typecast in Doctor Who Battlefield Part 1 in 1989 as well. She leans so hard into playing the evil, all-powerful character, and you can see that she's having fun doing it too. I personally loved every moment of her performance, and it was just great. And I loved seeing her eat up that scenery. Kevin Pollak and Rick Overton played the Brownies, inserting so much comedy in the film, keeping the storyline fun and lighthearted. After work, they would polish their skills doing stand-up improv at a bar in San Rafael, California. As well, about 240 actors were hired to play the Nolans. My enjoyment. Okay, after 13 levels of preparation to get to the ritual of oblivion, Queen Bavmorda is interrupted by invasion. The final battle with Bavmorda ends with her accidentally spilling her dark potion on herself, vanquishing her to the netherworld, while removing all of the magic that she cast upon the kingdoms, freeing the king of Tirasleen. Elora Dannon was given to Sorsha and Mad Mardigan to raise as their own, and Willow returned home as a burgeoning wizard. What a wonderful, happy ending. At the time, it opened to mixed reviews from the critics. It grossed $137.6 million worldwide against a $35 million budget. It did very well at the box office, but it didn't perform as well as George Lucas expected it to, so that's why he never got around to do a sequel. However, it did get enough recognition to receive 2 Academy Award nominations. I remember being so excited to see this based on the trailer. The music, the action, the adventure was so enticing. As well, I was excited to see yet another movie from George Lucas. He just had a knack for creating content that I adored. My mom took me and my brother to go see the film, and instantly it became a classic in our household. My mom purchased the video cassette of the film, and we would gather around the living room eating homemade popcorn and watching the film and reciting as many lines as we could remember. Oh my goodness, we had so much fun together doing that. I thought that Willow was a great one-off movie because Elora ends up being a princess living in the castle where she needs to be to fulfill the prophecy, right? I was very surprised to know that there were books known as the Chronicles of Shadow War, written by Chris Claremont, based on George Lucas's ideas. They were Shadow Moon in 1995, Shadow Dawn in 1996, and Shadow Star in the year 2000. Unfortunately, they were disliked by fans and disowned by Lucas, who wasn't able to oversee the writing of the series. In 2020, Ron Howard announced a sequel series for Disney Plus was in the works, and on November 30th, 2022, the series aired, starring Warwick Davis as Willow Offgood, and Joanne Woodward reprised her role as Sorsha. I did not see the series to be able to comment on it, but this film was a beautiful tale of a hero's journey. Willow was a farmer that was bullied and shunned. When it came down to it, he led with his heart and took on responsibilities that may have been way beyond his abilities, but his courage was his strength. He learned to use his cunning and given skill to beat the impossible and save the day. This is a wonderful fantasy adventure film with a beautiful love story as well, and a light-hearted tone of uplifting hope and magical wonder. My rating is a 9.7. Well, that sums up my review, guys. I hope you liked it, and if you did, I've got over 100 of these, so go on ahead and browse the channel to see more reviews from me like this. I also do live streams and watch parties, so subscribe if you haven't done so already, and hit the bell icon to be the very first to be notified of my next video. I want to take this moment to recognize my Patreon supporters who are responsible for helping me to produce this video. Many thanks to these incredible movie lovers for their support. I also would like to thank the members of the channel, super chats and super thanks that I have received so far. This is Retro Nerd Girl signing off. Take care, movie lovers, and off to my next review!